He, yeah, my first boyfriend was
Sure.
I think his name is Manny.
Good evening. Thank you so much for coming for another event, forum for hearing a political candidate. On behalf of my colleague, Henrik Schatzinger, and myself, Brian Smith, co-directors of the Center for Politics of the People, we welcome you. And tonight I'm going to introduce the real Brian Smith. My long-lost twin, who looks better than I do. Brian is the mayor of Waupaca. See, I'm downstate.
I do like Waupaca.
He has spent his life serving the people of Wisconsin. As a small business owner and Waupaca's mayor for the last 15 years, Brian knows what it takes to support our way of life in central Wisconsin. He will bring an independent voice to the state Senate and isn't afraid to work across the aisle to do what's best for all of our communities. As a husband to his wife Terry, as a father of 3 and a grandfather of 5, Brian knows that our future is too important to sacrifice on partisan bickering. He is a former high school teacher who spent 11 years in the teaching profession. As an educator, Brian mentored kids as a high school sports coach and served as president of his local teachers association. His experience gives him broad understanding of our public school system and appreciation for the hard work of our local educators. In the state Senate, he promises that he'll make a high priority on reinvesting in Wisconsin's public schools so that every child can achieve their fullest potential in life. Born 55th in a family of 10 children, Brian is a lifelong Wisconsinite who will protect our way of life by supporting local control to ensure that our communities can make their own decisions about how best to govern themselves. Brian will work to fund our local schools, support small business job creators, protect access to clean drinking water, and invest in Wisconsin's infrastructure. We invited the sitting Senator, Luther Olson, tonight, but he preferred to come separately, so he will be here as the Republican candidate on October 27th. Brian, welcome to Ripon College.
Thank you. Well, that was such a great introduction. Thank you, Professor Brian Smith. That's a little hard to say. Quite honestly, we talked about that a little bit before we started. We've been all over the district, and this is actually the 4th other Brian Smith that I've met. And we both think that's not a very popular name, but it's obviously a little bit. Thank you very much for the introduction. I appreciate that. Yeah, I am the mayor of the city of Waupaca. I'm very proud to be the longest serving mayor of the city of Waupaca. I just accomplished that in the last election by running for my 8th term, and I feel that we've accomplished quite a bit there. We've had some bumpy roads, and the roads have gotten a little bumpier as we in the last few years. So we're working hard to maintain the services that we have. A couple things that Professor Smith did not touch on that I just want to tell you. I am the first generation of student that went to college in my family also, as number 5 in the family. I actually attended a small university, UW Stevens Point. City's a little larger than Ripon, but it was a small community only about 30 miles away from my hometown, and great education. I majored in business education with an emphasis in accounting. I ended up, after I graduated from the university, I ended up going to Racine School District, and I taught in the Racine School Districts for 5 years, where I taught at Racine Horlick, and I also taught at Case High School too, which is the newer of the 3 high schools, public high schools that are down there. I coached, back then there was not a teacher shortage, there was no Act 10, so there was not a teacher shortage, so you had to be able to coach or do extracurricular activities back then, and I was considered a good candidate because I was willing to coach. I was single, of course, so I could do many other activities at that time. And so that was what really got my foot in the door. You know, there were a couple hundred candidates that applied for that job in Racine. And quite honestly, when I applied for teaching positions after I graduated from college, I only had 2 opportunities to interview for jobs in the entire state of Wisconsin, and that was in Green Bay and in Racine, and I chose Racine as my teaching as where I went. So it was a good choice, obviously. I had the opportunity 5 years later to move back to my hometown. The teacher that I had that was a business teacher when I was in high school, and he retired, and they actually came knocking on the door and asked if I would consider moving back to Waupaca. Made me feel good that they wanted me back, and I took the job. It was a pay cut, but I got to go back to my hometown, which we were just talking about this earlier. Hometowns are, even if you don't live in your hometown or you're away from your hometown, the hometown is still in your heart, and you still feel about. So I feel very fortunate that I was able to come back to Waupaca. After I taught for a number of years in Waupaca, I had friends that said, "Hey, you're an accounting major, you can do my tax returns, right?" And so I started doing tax returns for people, and I ended up with about 200 clients after 6 years in Waupaca. You know, and I go, "Oh my gosh, what am I going to do here? I can't teach, and I can't coach, and I can't do tax returns. I got to make a decision here." And I did make the decision to leave teaching, and it was tough, quite honestly, because I really enjoyed the teaching aspect of it, and I had an opportunity to talk to some of the college dems tonight. We had dinner with them tonight, and I felt like I was a teacher again, sitting down and asking questions, and I really enjoyed that. It was a lot of fun. So I started my own accounting business. I quit my job. I had 3 children and a wife, and I quit my job, and I had income from, you know, about 200 clients, which didn't amount to a whole lot of money, and we lived very poorly for a few years, and thought, "Oh man, I made a mistake here," but it turned around, and it's been a very good profession for me, and quite honestly, it's been an excellent profession for me to be an accountant. It's given me the ability to do a lot of other things that I wanted to do, and one of them is being the mayor of the city of Waupaca. And so I do want to touch on one other thing that I do also. My parents were in the bar-restaurant business for many years. They both passed away about the same time, about 14, 15 years ago. And instead of letting that bar go or sell it or just let it go, we decided to invest quite a bit of money into that and make it into a sports bar restaurant, which is one of the main parts of downtown Waupaca, which is, if you've ever been to Waupaca, which you know almost everybody has, it's a thriving downtown, and it's doing well. And the Paca Pub and Grill is one of the places that we're very proud of. That we invested quite a bit of money in that, and that I can't take credit for all of it, but other businesses have invested in our downtown too, and I think that's a key part of that. That I not only say that we need to invest in our community or invest in our state, but I actually did that too, and we took risks in doing that, and they turned out pretty well. We're still trying to make it a viable business that we're never concerned about, but it's a work in progress, so we're doing well there. When I was a teacher, and Professor Smith talked about this too, I was the president of the local Teachers Association, and I was the head negotiator for the Teachers Association, so I had to sit down with a couple other of our teachers and negotiate, obviously, the contracts, and not just contracts, but all aspects of the teaching. And it helped me, quite honestly, because once I became the mayor of a small town, then I became the lead negotiator for the city of Waupaca with the unions that are well, quite honestly, we only have one union left, and that's our police association, but we had 3 different time that I first became mayor. And I think I am a lot better knowing both sides. I know how the teachers felt in negotiations, and I certainly know how it is to be on the other side and try to balance a budget, but also make sure that our employees are happy and that we continue the services that we want. So I feel that my experience there is one of the most important experiences there. And as a coach, you know, I talked about this with the college Dems too, you know, as a coach and as a teacher, and I know many of you are in here are teachers and coaches, but remember back to when you were in high school and back when you were in college, I bet you can name most of your high school teachers and most of your college teachers that you had and have, for the most part, fond memories about them. And so you know how important those teachers and professors were to you in your life, and you still talk about them, and you still know what their experiences are. And I think that's helped me, obviously, too, to be a better person, not only being a teacher, but also remembering as a student how important those teachers were to me, too. So, enough about that. I really wanted to talk about some of the things that concern all of us that's happening at the state level. And since we're on a college campus here, I think the first thing that I'd like to talk about is the concerns that we have at the college level in our state. And I know that we're at a private university, but you know as well as I do that these things are not just things that are affecting the public universities. We want to make sure that the middle class people in our state, the first time people that in their families that are able to go to college, that can continue to afford college. And I can tell you, as the fifth of 10 children, and we were very poor when I grew up, I would not have been able to go to college without the Pell Grants and the loans that were out there. And it made me understand even more so the importance of what's happening now, where we're having a big concern about how people are going to be able to afford to continue in college, and it's a hard thing to understand that. I mean, just something as simple as you have college debt, you're paying high interest rates, or you have a dollar amount payment that doesn't fit your budget, and you're not allowed to refinance your loan. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. It's common sense that you're able to refinance your loan. And I'm sure you've heard this a few times from the Democrats. You probably have not heard it necessarily from the opposition because they voted against this for whatever reason. But, I mean, you're able to refinance your home loans. You're able to, if you want, you're able to refinance your car loans. But you can't refinance your student loans. And you know, that concerns us because obviously as you get out of college, you don't have a lot of extra money. So if you're paying off your university loans, you're not going to be the person that's out buying a new car. You're not the person that's going to be able to buy a home yet. You're not the person that's going to be able to go on vacations. You're not going to be able to buy dinner at the Pack Pub and Grill in Waupaca either because you're using that money to pay off your debt. And I think it's important that we remember that everybody's different. Not everybody that comes out of college is going to be able to afford to pay their debt and also live a good life with the money that they make right off the bat. So it's important that we remember on that. I also think it's important too that we know that when we spend less money for colleges and so on, that means there's less money available for all of our students to be able to either borrow loans or to get Pell Grants, and those are things that we need to continue to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to go to college, whether it's a 4-year college or a 2-year college, but they have that ability to do that. And let's not forget, one of the big things that we remember about Wisconsin is our education system and how proud we have been through our lives. I'm talking as an older person here now, but throughout our lives as Wisconsin was like top in education. We always felt that we were so proud of what was happening in Wisconsin. You were gonna get a great education in Wisconsin. And I'm concerned that we're going down the wrong path there. And I haven't even talked about K through 12 yet, and we can talk about that later too, but I did want to talk about the university issues that we have here too. And, you know, I'm mentioning the college gyms probably a couple more times as I talk tonight, but those are concerns for them too, obviously, is that how are they going to afford? I mean, we have one person in the audience that is going to be able to graduate in 3 years. Good for her. She's a lot smarter than I am. But she's able to graduate in 3 years, so she'll be able to keep her debt down, you know. But not everybody is that lucky, you know. And there's people that have to work part-time so that they can afford to go to school. And so it's going to take them longer. So it's actually going to cost them more money to get their education. And that's wrong. We need to make sure that we help our college students and so that they continue to move forward. And you know, we want to keep our college students within our state. We want to make sure that once they go to school here, if they want, they stay within our state. So, you know, we talk about jobs, but not only do we talk about jobs, but we talk about good jobs, good paying jobs, jobs that pay good benefits, you know, and right to work, whether you understand what right to work is or not, but basically what right to work means, and you've heard it 100 times probably already, but it's right to work for less.
Yeah.
And that's truly what has happened. And I don't mean just pay. I don't really just mean just pay, because that will trickle down after a while, and pay will get less, but you're getting less benefits than you did before. People, quite honestly, there are less people getting benefits now than we were getting in the high years of the unions back in the 60s. And that's pretty sad. You know, and it's sad that we would move backwards that far. And so right to work is something that has been passed in the state of Wisconsin. It's been passed in a number of states throughout our country. They've never returned once they've passed the right to work. But I'll tell you, I'll work very hard to repeal the right to work. If we can do that, if we cannot do that, we'll work very hard to work within that parameters. But making sure that we keep the employees and the people of our state as the most important part of that. And you know, and I'll say this a number of times as we go through this too. You talk about things that are being taken away from us, like right to work. And you could understand it if we were gaining something from it. But I challenge anybody in this audience, and you gotta be careful when you challenge people, but I challenge anybody in this audience to tell me what they've gained from right to work. And I don't think you can, because we haven't seen it. I mean, and it's been around for a little while, not long, but long enough that you would say, okay, what did I financially gain from right to work? Or what did I gain socially from right to work? And I don't think you can get anybody that can actually give you that answer. So it wasn't done for the reasons that they told you that it was there, and that's too bad. You know, I want to touch on public schools because I think it's important that we talk about public education, because again, we are so proud of our public education in Wisconsin, and we always have been. And we were so proud of our teachers. We've always been proud of our teachers. We've been proud of our public employees. We've been proud of the people that take care of our veterans who deserve to be taken care of. We were proud of the people, our police officers and our firemen. And we're proud of people that have to make sure that we're safe and that work in the prisons and so on. And they've been villainized. They've been villainized by this current administration. It's scary, it's sad that that's the case, but Act 10 has not only stripped them of some benefits and pay and rights that they had, but it's also divided people that didn't have it, and they don't want anybody else to have it because they don't think they'll ever attain that goal. And I've always said this, instead of taking something away from somebody that makes so much sense, why take it away? Why not ask so that you get that? Why not go to your employer? Why not work very hard so that you get that same thing? That the people that work so hard at it, you know, and that's what worked, quite honestly. You know, I mean, if you were to split the politicians down the middle, there's always that group of people that you know, you have the hardcore Democrats, you have the hardcore Republicans, you have the Democrats that look at the views, you have the Republicans that look at the views, and then you have, of course, your independents and others and so on. But I'll tell you, what happened was they were able to villainize the public people so much that they convinced even the people that know better decided that it was best to vote for the current administration, and that's very sad. I hope that we can fix that, and that's one of the things that I'll work very hard to do. I thought it was very unfair that Act 10 was just passed without the opportunity for anybody to truly discuss it, that it affected, and I know as a former educator, we worked very hard in negotiating contracts, and we negotiated a lot of those things instead of pay, and we just lost those just like that, and it seems unfair to me. And don't forget, I'm a small business owner, you know? I have 15 employees that I have to be concerned about too. And they always say, oh, he's a small business owner, he must sway more with the Republicans than he does the Democrats. But to tell you the truth, that's not what it's about, quite honestly. It's about treating your employees fairly. That's what it's all about. And again, that's not what's happening right now in the state, especially with our public employees. So, if anything, if we walk out of here tonight and you see a police officer, or if you see your professor or teacher, shake them and say thank you to them, because they feel like they've been hurt and they've been villainized for the last few years. So, you know, if I can get you to do anything tonight, do that. That would be awesome. We need to support our public schools. We've lost about $260 per pupil in our public schools, but the private schools, the private voucher schools, have gained over $900 per pupil. And we're having a hard enough time affording one school system in our state. And now the current administration, the current legislator, wants us to fund 2 school districts. It's not going to work. Common sense tells us that that is not going to work. And who's going to get hit first? It's going to be the small schools, the small rural schools, the small city school. Because what's going to happen is that we have less teachers, we have less money, so teachers are getting out of the profession at a lot faster rate than teachers are getting into it. So these teachers at some time, even though the current legislator felt that we were going to save money, remember the old statement, tools? We're all going to get the tools that are going to help us to balance our budget. Well, it's going to turn around on them, because quite honestly, now teachers, because the attrition is a lot faster than people coming in, they're going to be high commodities, and those people are going to be able to go to the highest bidder. And that's going to hurt the small schools, because they're not going to be able to afford that. So look for that in the future if it continues to do that. And that's going to be very sad if that happens to us. And not only did they pay money for private schools, the voucher program, but they also gave people a credit on their state income tax return for sending their kids to private school, and they choose to send their kids there. I've talked to a lot of people that send their kids to private schools, and I have nothing against that. There's nothing that I have against people sending their kids to private schools. But I got to tell you, I don't think there are very many people that expected to get help from the state of Wisconsin with taxpayer dollars to send their kids to private schools. They felt that that was something that they were gonna pay for, so it's just an extra dollar amount that they were gonna get. So the tax credit even helps them even more. So it saddens me that, that we're gonna try and maintain two school districts. I just want to touch on a couple of other things, and then I don't know where I am on time or how I handle this necessarily, but talk a little bit about transportation. Transportation concerns me for a couple of reasons. Most of us will tell, I mean, as a city mayor, we've seen less funding for our roads, and that's true, but we haven't seen total deterioration of our roads, so people are not concerned as much about it. But I gotta tell you, the thing that concerns me as an accountant, as a business person, is there is no plan to pay for our transportation, for our infrastructure in our state. And we need to do something about that. We need to have people that understand that you can't borrow money and not have a plan to pay it back in the future, because who's going to be paying it back? Your children and your grandchildren. You are too, of course, you know, but your grandchildren and your children are going to be paying that back too. So you got to have a plan, and I think I can help that. And the plan is not, okay, we'll just stop projects. We'll just stop projects and we'll fund local projects instead of the main projects that they're talking about in the Milwaukee and the Racine area. Those are important to us too. Don't forget, local projects are very important to us, and they need to be done. But those projects down in the Milwaukee and Racine area need to be done too. If we have a project that we decide doesn't need to be done, that's one thing. But if you're going to put it off for a year or 2 years, as we would say in a budget, it's only going to cost us more money in the future to do that. And that's a mistake. You have to find the best way to do that. So I'm wide open to ideas on how to fund transportation. You know, I'm a fiscally responsible person, but I also know spend money to save money later is pretty important too. And it works, quite honestly. And transportation, don't forget, those are good jobs. People that are working on our infrastructure in our state, those are good paying jobs with good benefits, and those people are not able to work if we're not doing things that need to be done in our state. So let's keep our people working, especially with the great benefits and the great paying jobs that they have. And the last thing I really want to touch on before we open up for questions is I want to talk about the environment. Wisconsin is so proud of our outdoors, and we don't want to sell out. We don't want to sell out our environment to fracking mines and to large CAFOs and to high capacity wells. And don't get me wrong here. You know, I'm not here to say I think large dairy farms should go away, because they are profitable, don't get me wrong, but they should follow the rules. They should make it safe for our environment. I'm okay with them being here if they follow the rules so that it doesn't affect us in the future. It's the same thing with high capacity wells. There is science out there that will reduce the amount of water that they're using on the fields. And I don't want to get into too much detail, but there is science out there that tells you when it's best to water your fields, to water your lawns. And how many times have you driven down rural roads and you got splashed by water on your roads? I mean, is that water being used wisely? I haven't seen the asphalt grow too much lately, so I don't think it's working. But it's very important to us. And again, I think right now the current legislator, we have the rules in place to make sure that people follow those rules. they're just not allowed to do that. The DNR needs to decide things on their own. They are the experts. The political people need to stay out of that and allow the DNR to do their job, because they will do the best job for you. Thank you for allowing me to, I don't want to call it rant, but tell you everything about things that I feel are very important and about why I decided to run.
Thank you, Brian. Our forum tonight is co-sponsored by the Ripon Commonwealth Press. And so the publisher of the Ripon Commonwealth Press is here, Tim Like, and he will begin the conversation by asking some questions of Brian. Tim?
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Brian. Let's start with the last issue. We'll work our way back with the DNR. The Attorney General Brad Schimmel said that the DNR does not have the statutory authority to regulate high-capacity wells, and that needs to come from the legislature. Rationale being that the legislature needs to provide direction, and it need not come from regulators who are not empowered or authorized to create regulations. So do you want to comment on whether, if and you may not agree with Attorney General Schimmel, but do you think there's a legislative remedy to give some direction to the DNR high-capacity wells, and as they affect streams, rivers, and lakes?
Yeah, thank you for the question, and again, I want to touch base just as the mayor of the city of Waupaca. I think it's important to understand when we have departments within our jurisdiction and our legislative body have chose, and I hope most legislative bodies have chose not to micromanage. And I really think what Attorney General is whether I agree or disagree with what he's saying, I do believe that the legislators, the buck stops at the legislators, so they're going to want to make that decision. But really, the most important part of it is that the DNR knows what's best, and we don't need somebody micromanaging us that doesn't know anything about what's going on within, that has any knowledge at all about high-capacity wells, or has any knowledge at all about cables or frac mining. They don't know what that is. I mean, we have experts that we pay to do those things, and if you don't take their consideration, what their expertise is, into account when you make decisions, that's wrong. And again, I call that micromanaging, when you try to control something that you've hired somebody else to do for you. And I think that's wrong.
Thank you. You discussed transportation, and you said you are open to ideas, but if you are elected state senator, we'll be looking to you for ideas. It seems to me the options are borrowing, and the argument for borrowing, of course, is that people who benefit from the highways also contribute to the cost. It could be increase in registration fees. It could be increase in the gas tax, which, as you know, is 32 cents a gallon. It could be toll roads, like Illinois has done. Really, what are your ideas to help pay for transportation?
Yeah, it's if we look throughout the country on how people have handled the issues with transportation, it's multifaceted. And if you're looking for me to come up with brand new ideas on how that's going to happen, I can only tell you that I'm going to use my knowledge as an accountant, as somebody that helps to balance their budgets, not only at the city level, but I mean, I have over 3,500 clients that we work with, and you know, that's our job, is to make sure that they have enough money to live on, and they have enough money, and is your business viable? Should you stop putting money into it, and so on. So my concern is, number one, I'm very fiscally responsible. I don't want to raise anybody's taxes if I can do that. I really want to look at, number one, I'm not against increasing the gas tax, if that's what it needs to be. I think that makes sense. It's a user fee. I don't I don't like the term tax when it's actually a user fee type thing, so I'm all for that. Somebody that drives 20,000 miles a year and somebody that drives 3,000 miles a year, I think they should pay more for it, because they're using it. And I'm not against increase in license fees either, because, you know, if I'm driving a 4-cylinder vehicle, and on our roads, it does a lot less damage than large vehicles that are run by industry, you know, that are transferring logistic type things from one place to another. They put a lot more wear and tear on our roads than others. So I'm not against that. That's a good option. Toll roads, you know, we all said we wanted to keep Chicago people out of our state, so let's figure out how to do it with toll roads. No, you know, I don't know what the costs are of toll roads, quite honestly, so I wouldn't be against toll roads if it made sense, but what does it cost to build the toll road system? Although there is better technology now than there was when they first started doing toll roads, so it obviously doesn't cost as much as it used to. I don't know if you, and this might be in other communities, in Waupaca we don't have parking meters, but down in Wisconsin Dells area, we were just down there a few weeks ago, you know, they don't have parking meters anymore. You just have a number that's either painted on the ground or they got a little sign, and you gotta go to a meter and you have to pay for it. So instead of having 1,000 meters in Wisconsin Dells, which how much did that cost them? Now they have 12 meters throughout. So they've been able to save money by reducing the amount of meters, and I'm sure that's what the case is with toll roads too. So quite honestly, I think toll roads probably make, and you probably all agree with this, toll roads probably make a lot more sense in our southeastern part of our state than they do in central Wisconsin areas and so on, and might even make sense in the western part of our state too, especially up by the Twin Cities. Of course, my cousins will probably not appreciate that, but they love to come to Wisconsin. But yeah, so no, I'm not against it at all.
Okay. Can we talk about Act 10? I bet you'd like to talk about Act 10.
I do like to talk about Act 10.
As you know, Senator Olson voted for Act 10, but with reservations. And you on the flip side have said you opposed Act 10, but there's some things you liked about it. Can you talk about what you liked about it?
Did I say I like something? I gotta think about it.
August 29th, Wisconsin Eye.
Oh yeah, I did, okay. I'll tell you, I didn't mean it exactly the way, and I'm not recanting what I said, because I did say that, and I remember what I said. What I said was, with Act 10, as a private employer, I don't pay 100% towards my employee's retirement. I pay half towards my employee's retirement. In Act 10, almost all public employees were getting 100% of their retirement paid towards by their employer. Now, don't get me wrong, I understand it was negotiated over the years. Because when I first started teaching, not that I'm going to say how old I am, but when I first started teaching, you did have to contribute to your retirement account, and that was negotiated over the years, and by the time I got out of education, the employer was paying 100% of it. So I didn't think it was fair that employees had to start paying, and let's say it's 6%, towards their retirement account. That's about what it is. The employer pays 6%, and the employee's now paying 6%. I don't think it's fair that it was just completely taken away from it, but I think the majority of the people in the state understand that you have to pay something towards your retirement account, and they didn't feel that that was right, that the public employer was paying 100% towards that. So I thought that that might help to not villainize the public employees. But Act 10 did worse than that, you know. It did worse than that. it made the public employees look like bad people, like they were stealing money from you. And they were doing things that they weren't supposed to be doing. They were getting more vacation days or more time off than you were in your private business. And that's not right. Those things were negotiated again, and those are things that we all hope that we get. You know, again, as a self-employed, I have a partner, but as a self-employed businessman, I always say, I'm probably the only one in my business that doesn't get paid vacation, doesn't get sick leave, you know, doesn't get holiday pay. But I technically do get it. I still get paid, you know, but I don't write myself a check for vacation pay. And those are benefits that make people happy that they're working for you. They don't necessarily cost a lot of money. So I guess my point was that I was hoping that Act 10 would be able to help so that public and private people felt that they could work together.
Thank you. One more, if I may. In talking about college affordability, you commented that you sense the UW system maybe, and I think to use your words, going down the wrong path. As you know, Governor Walker has proposed a 5th-year freeze on tuition. Given the fact that it seems that the university is going down the wrong path, would you suggest that freeze not occur?
The freeze by itself makes sense because we know that tuition is very costly. We just talked about that loan, when we get out of college, we have a huge student debt. And so if you look at it on paper and you say, okay, you're not going to pay any more for your college tuition today than you did 3 years ago, you'd say, hey, that's wonderful. But the problem is you can't freeze tuition and reduce the dollars that are going to your university. They don't work. You got to still have income. You know what I mean? If your expenses go up, if anybody has a private business in town here, or even as an individual at home, you know, your utility bills go up. You know, your food bills go up. You need to have more income to do that. So if you're going to freeze tuition, then you have to find another way to fund education at the university level. And they haven't come up with a plan, except the plan is to have massive layoffs of not only professors, but also to have layoffs of their assistants, and increase class sizes, and make people so that they no longer feel proud to be a part of our university system in Wisconsin, and they're looking elsewhere because they believe they can get a better education. And again, don't forget what I said before. I was so proud that I graduated from a Wisconsin university because I felt that that was one of the top universities in the state. I still think it is, but I don't want it to continue to go down that beaten path. So, yeah, you're welcome.
We can now open it up for about 20 minutes or so for questions. So I would ask you to raise your hand. We'll recognize you. I'll repeat the question so that the video recording can pick up the question, and then Brian will give you the answer. So, fire away. No.
1 in 5 women have relied on Planned Parenthood for important health care like annual exams, cancer screenings, birth control, STD testing, and treatment. Yet these services are constantly under attack. How would you address these attacks at the state level?
Okay. The question is that 20% of women rely on the various health services that Planned Parenthood provides. How would you respond to the attacks and criticisms and the attempts really to reduce any kind of public funding of Planned Parenthood?
I'm trying to find my notes quick, but I'm going to do this off the top of my head here, quite honestly, because this is near and dear to me, obviously, too, of having 2 daughters, and I actually have 3 granddaughters, too. So it concerns me too, about the avenue that we're going down with Planned Parenthood, and the funding, the lack of funding that we have. And I know that just recently, one of the Appleton facilities had to shut down, and that's too bad. That's the wrong way to go here, quite honestly. Most of the people that rely on Planned Parenthood don't have any other options to go. And this is the one option that we can help people with. Does it cost money to do that? Yeah, it costs money to do that. Is it important to us to make sure that their well-being is taken care of? Yes, and I think that's one of the things, again, that Wisconsin has always prided themselves on, is taking care of people that need the help, but also people knowing where you can go to get that help too. You know, that you don't have to hide in a closet or go somewhere else to do those things. So yeah, it's important, and it would be very important to me if I was to win this election. When I win this election.
Another question for Brian. Yes, in the back.
I got a comment first, and it's regards to transportation that Tim brought up. I would say that basically even now, we are paying an extra tax. You aren't paying at the pump, you're paying at the repair shop. And with that one, yeah, it's great that the mechanic gets some dollars out of it too, but it's not going to repair the roads or do anything to improve any of that. It's just paying to repair your car. Now my question is this, is 2 years ago, we had a public referendum here in Ripon with regards to the move to amend. In other words, basically, the premise of it is corporations do not have the rights of the Constitution, only human beings. And the other thing is money is not speech, and as such can be regulated. Your opponent, and by the way, this passed with close to 79% favorable here in the city of Ripon. Your opponent opposed that after I asked him about it. Would you, if you are elected senator, would you support an amendment or pushing that forward to the federal government?
So the comment is that we already pay for repairs of our cars because of the degradation of the roads. But the question then is, that this gentleman is asking is, would our candidate here support
The premise of the move to amend.
the premise of move to amend?
So basically what you're asking me is if I agree with taking dollars out of politics, is what you're asking me.
Pretty much.
That's what you're asking, okay. And as we've all seen recently in the newspaper, it's a concern of ours, obviously, that there are dollars pouring in. It's bad enough that we have high corporate dollars that are being poured in from companies within Wisconsin, but we have high corporate dollars that are coming in from all over the country that are trying to tell us what to do, and that's wrong. So if that's your question, then I'm in favor of getting corporate dollars out of politics. I am in favor of that.
Another question? Professor
Follow
Godfrey.
up on exactly the same point, and I'll preface that by, I'm going to ask about the exemption from liability that has come out of the papers that were part of the John Doe investigation that should have been destroyed but weren't. I'll preface that by saying I grew up in West Virginia, so I regard myself as very well trained in recognizing political corruption. This definite, you know what I'm talking about, your opponent has been in the front page of the newspaper in this regard. This definitely does not pass the smell test. And I wonder if you could comment, are there steps that you could take if, when elected, to, in this case, get the money out of politics, but this is even more serious, it's a quid pro quo.
So the question is, would you support exemption from liability, which currently,
If it was arsenic,
No lead.
No.
it doesn't matter, it's like, same.
which your opponent is now very much been accused of being involved in?
Yeah, the sad part about, let me start with the sad part about this whole thing is there were 171 lawsuits of young children that were affected by lead paint. I'm assuming they must have either consumed it or got it into their wounds or whatever the case is. I didn't read all of the 171. But nobody talked about that. What they talked about, and that's what concerns me the most. Everybody's trying to hide behind this, and you've heard the pay for play. You get paid and then you vote in favor of something that helps the person that you get paid from in large corporation. And that's what my opponent is being accused of, is pay for play. And the paper, if you follow the paper trail, it certainly looks like he financially gained from that, or he gained office by doing that. But again, his comment basically was that I voted for something and somebody else got paid. I mean, that's basically what his comment was. Think about what he just said. I voted for something and somebody else got paid. So even if he didn't get paid, somebody else did, and that's not right. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, it's, the whole thing is, it obviously needs they need to get to the bottom of it, but it stinks. It stinks for these poor 171 children, and I know that lead-based paint has not been in paint since 1978, but there's still lead-based paint in people's homes, older homes especially, and if you don't encapsulate that or get rid of that, you have concerns about people that are going to get sick from that. And I have to take it on its merit that there are 171 cases where it did affect those people, and nobody seems to be, and I'm talking about the current administration, the current legislators that are being accused of that, they didn't care about those 171 people. They cared about getting re-elected so they could screw those 171 people again. So, excuse my turn there, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah.
Question here.
I was a freshman at the University of Wisconsin in the autumn of 1968. I went in the UW hospital for a small procedure and I received no bill. It was just part of the tuition. If I'd had to have a heart transplant, I wouldn't have gotten one because they didn't exist. My question is, we've had revenue caps for schools, we've had tuition freezes for universities, but I hear nothing about a freeze on the cost of medicine. What would you do in regard to medical costs?
So the question is, there have been freezes in regards to local education and universities, tuition freezes, but no freezes in terms of medical costs. What would you do to bring medical costs under control?
The first thing that I do, great question, quite honestly, because what is one of the biggest concerns that we have, especially as we get older, we use the medical a lot more than we do as young adults, but it's a concern, obviously, because that's part of our benefit package when we start working. We have to worry about what the medical costs are. City of Waupaca, we are working on our budget for 2017, and we have a 3% increase in our health insurance. 3%, we're going to, hey, it's awesome, 3%. That's unheard of, because they're telling us that in most places, they're seeing a 29% increase in their health insurance costs from one year to the next. So I'm not sure what we did right, but we did do something right in Waupaca, at least for 2017. The first thing that I would do is I would not be one of the, I don't know how many states, 2 or 3 states that are not taking Medicaid dollars from the federal government. You know, I would take those monies. I would not kick people off Badger Care that deserve to be on Badger Care because they can't afford it. I would leave them on Badger Care because that's why we have Badger Care, is to help people that can't afford it. And what does that do when you kick people off Badger Care? That increases premiums. I agree with the 80-20 program that the federal government, and these are all things that the Affordable Health Care, President Obama's, you want to call it Obamacare or whatever, these are things that are supposed to limit the amount of increases that can happen in health insurance, but the state of Wisconsin won't do it. There's an 80-20 plan out there where you can only spend 20% of your money on administration, the rest has to go to health care within the health insurance company. State of Wisconsin does not agree with that. They don't agree with that. So what they're saying is that you can give the corporate people more than 20% of the money they receive. Now, I'm all in favor of people making as much money as they can, but not when you're dealing with health insurance when people have no choice. You have to have health insurance, you have to have medical. So, I mean, those are just a few of the things that we could do to help lower the cost of health insurance. If you're trying to get me to get to the point where I say we should make it free for everybody, I can't say that, but I can tell you I know that I can help to reduce the cost of health insurance in the state of Wisconsin just by a few things that I just talked about right here. And I think that will help a lot.
But that would not necessarily decrease the cost of medicine itself.
That would not decrease the cost of medicine?
I mean, I don't object to having lower insurance rates, but.
Right, right.
He doesn't.
So, what you're saying.
No,
is-
I mean,
I get your point.
nobody else has a good answer for this either. I don't mean to be totally honest.
I don't think you are being nasty to me, you're making me think. What's wrong with that? You know, but I gotta tell you, that's a whole different reform than what we're talking about right now. And I mean, obviously, I don't know if we're there yet, but we might be there where we need to discuss those types of things. Because again, that's become one of the highest costs that any of us have is our medical costs, and that's sad. You know, we don't necessarily want to be spending money on medical. That doesn't help the local car dealer for you to buy a new car from them. So obviously, I would be in favor of reducing medical insurance and also medical expenses. I just don't know that I know that answer yet without complete reform of the medical.
One more question. In the back.
One of the things that you talked about was increasing possibly gas tax, paper, county roads. And as a Democrat, more of a progressive, I'm really against that. And I'll tell you why. Until I guess when I'm driving down the road in my Prius, and I get passed by a John Menard's truck, and I get passed then by a ABC supply truck, and those billionaires in our state pay no state tax. Now you come back and ask me to pay for tax, while I'm watching, as you noted, those heavier trucks ripping up our roads. I just don't think it's fair to ask for a road tax when our billionaires and multi-millionaires escape paying nothing. So I would hope it would be linked in a bigger picture than just screwing me over at the gas pump. Or, I guess in a way that's not bad because we get all the transient people, but when you do a registration thing, it just hits the people that live here. And possibility that when I see the John Menard's truck go by and it be nothing, as they're on their way to pollute our river streams, would irritate me quite a bit, and I would hope that you would look at that instead of voting for a quick fix, because it's not a quick fix, since so much has been screwed up by walking.
The question is it not unfair to charge a gasoline tax to everybody when it's the larger corporations with the larger trucks that are doing the most damage to the road? And also many out-of-state businesses use our roads. So how could you have an equitable fee that would not hit the small business or the individual car owner?
Yeah, thank you. And I maybe, if you don't mind that, this woman right here had her hand up. Can you? And I don't know what she's gonna ask me. Maybe I'll say, no, don't ask me. But I guess I didn't make myself completely clear, because I don't think the answer is one thing. I don't think the increase in gas tax is the only answer to this. And you remember what I said a couple of months ago. So what I just said a few minutes ago, I didn't say that I was going to increase gas tax. I would look at it.
I guess I'm just looking at, there has to be some parity, because I think it is a bigger picture when some people totally escape paying taxes of any kind.
Right.
In the state of
Yeah, no doubt, and that's a whole nother story, but I gotta tell you, that's why I think the license fees and the gas tax probably have to go together. You have to figure out a way that if you have a vehicle that tears up your road more than your Prius does, they should pay more in license fees. And so those two things are gonna have to go together. You can't raise one without raising the other if you're concerned about that. And I am concerned about that, because we've seen that at the city level too, where we have large trucks that travel from one plant to the other, and they tear up our roads, and we're the ones paying for it. The local taxpayers are paying for that, and not the industry is paying for that. So I feel with you on that, to tell you the truth, and I was hoping that I made that clear, but I'm glad you asked the question, so I made it more clear.
Betty, you can have the last question.
Oh, thank you. I'd like to do a little PS to this gentleman to include agriculture business, small and large, in your taxing for road usage. Because most of the road usage that I observe in the township of Ripon is large semis, large haulers of various products. So agriculture might need more charges to their transportation system.
So her comment is that the large agricultural businesses may need higher fees and taxes because they are the ones that use most of our roads.
Sure, and again, I'm all in favor of user fees. I know you didn't ask a question, but.
That's not my question, that's a PS again.
Oh.
This is a PS.
No, wait a second.
I learned this from Gary. Okay, our teaching experience was in the state of California, and so I'd like to clarify that not all teachers' salaries are what they look like on paper. Our salary schedule had a nice number on the salary schedule, but our health care was taken out of that gross number. The state of California did not balance what we put in until we retired. And even then, we pay for private supplemental health insurance, big dollars, 4-figure every month for our supplemental. So you have to look at teachers' salaries with a big picture of what they really cover and what the teacher pays back to the state for health care. At the time we were teaching, we paid big money back to the state for health care. So teacher salaries are very complicated to look at,
Sure,
regardless of what state.
sure. So people from California ask questions differently than we do in Wisconsin. What is your question? I'm sorry.
This is not your question, Betty.
An insight.
an insight.
And there are many situations where that is the case, where we have to be very careful, because if you don't read
Right,
into everything, you're not gonna fully understand it.
because when we moved back to California, we got the maybe erroneous insight that the state was paying for teachers, not out of the teacher's salary number itself. So be careful when you're explaining teachers' salaries.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
We want to thank Brian Smith for his sharing his wisdom. Brian, can you stay around for a few minutes to
I will.
inform a conversation? So he'll stay for a little bit. The next event for the Center for the Politics and the People will be next Wednesday evening at 6 p.m. We'll have a panel discussion here on the media and the 2016 election. And my colleague, Professor Henrik Schatzinger, will be the moderator. We'll have Charlie Sykes here, radio host from Milwaukee. We'll also have distinguished publisher of the Ripon Commonwealth Press, Tim Light. And we'll have Professor Michael Wagner from the University of Wisconsin-Madison from the School of Communications and the Political Science Department. So it should be a spirited conversation on how the media is covering the 2016 election. It will be right here in this room next Wednesday night, and we invite you. Great Hall, I'm sorry. Yeah, we're expecting a larger crowd, so we'll be in Great Hall on the center of the campus next Wednesday night at 6 p.m. Thank you all for coming.